All right, blessings, everyone. Okay, so I am going to do this video. It's going to be in memory, and we are not to forget, but to remember what Amalek did. Okay, and there is a reason, a very strong, powerful reason for me to be back here at Mount Sinai. And I truly believe that it has got everything to do with the night of my visitation, when the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came to me and announced himself as I am. A brother commented and mentioned it to me a little while back. It's been a while now, about a month. And he was asking about the question of I am that I am, and being said twice with Moses. And it really took me for a run. I mean, the waters just, things were just coming at me really fast, and I was really trying to retain a lot of what it was that was given to me. So all I have been doing in these last weeks is reading and writing things down as it comes out, and the patience that I need to not rush into it, because I feel like it's been too long since I've talked to anybody, or it plays on me. That's the natural side of things, I guess. That would be the flesh, but at the same time, it is God who leads, and I can go only as fast as I can go. Again, there's a lot of prayer and supplication that goes with this, and I really want to be careful. Because not only is it my testimony, but it is their testimony. And I mean, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and our Lord and Savior, Jesus, Yeshua. So I'm hoping that everything will make sense as we go along. I know it's not going to come together at the beginning, but it will at the end. So it's important that we hear it from the beginning to the end. So I just want to get started here. Okay. Okay. I came across this quote from Adolf Hitler. And again, it's about Sinai, Mount Sinai. And this is going to really be playing a big part of what we're going to be talking about here. And we're talking about the spirit of Amalek. And not forgetting the things that he has already done, but what he is doing today. Exodus 32:17 and 18. And when Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said unto Moses, there is a noise of war in the camp. And he said, it is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither is it the voice of them that cry for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear. And this part here reminds me of when I was descending from the mountain, and I looked over and I saw the mountains on fire, the top of the mountains, and as I looked into the valley, there was that lawlessness. Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did eat the same spiritual meat, and did drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. 1 Corinthians 10, 1-4. Now, just before I leave this here, I want to show you something. Okay, this just is one more picture here. But I noticed something in the crowd, and it was right here, and that was the Grim Reaper. A prelude of what was to come later on. With the fiery background here. Okay, so here they've now crossed the Red Sea, and they're thirsty, and they're questioning God. They're doubting, they're questioning. They're saying that they're thirsty. They need water. Okay, so Moses takes this to God personally, and I'm just going to read here Numbers 28 through 13. No, 7. Sorry. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes. And it shall give forth his water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so that thou wilt give the congregation and their beast drink. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord, as he was commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with the rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beast also. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, Because ye believed me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring the congregation into the land which I have given them. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. So here there's doubt. Something happened here, because right up until this point, Moses, when he was instructed and ordered to do something, he did it to a T, right up until this point. Because you see, God says to him, Aaron and thy brothers, speak ye unto the rock. And Moses spoke to the rebels. And thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so that thou, his rock, okay, his water, their eyes, and it shall give forth his water. And the rock, okay, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. Sorry about that. Okay, so again, something happened here. All right. And again here he says, and they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. So, as I'm reading, I'm thinking to myself, something's going on here, because Moses is also fighting the same battle that Joshua was fighting, but Joshua fighting in the flesh with the sword, and Moses was fighting in spirit, because I believe the experience that he had, that heaviness, that tiredness, that abnormal, it was just not normal tiredness. I experienced myself through an attack, and I'm sure there's others that have experienced the same thing. So I'm just going to read here. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up, his hands the one on one side and one on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomforted Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. When I was attacked, and I felt this 2 weeks prior, I had a visitation from not a visitation, an attack, whatever, a failed one at that. It was 2 weeks prior to finding out. One night I got a phone call from my daughter, and it was about my brother, and he was in serious trouble. They had to fly him into Toronto. He had a brain aneurysm, and it was during this conversation that I felt this weight, this heavy weight, that I actually fell asleep in the middle of the conversation. So I heard a voice, and I heard, "Are you coming?" And I jumped out of bed. I made the phone calls, packed, and went to go meet my brother. The question was, why would they stop me from going to see my brother? And I found out that it was because my brother was going through the same experiences that I was going through, and I was finding this out for the very first time. So something was happening, and I believe that this is the lineage, the cursed seed of Cain, the true enemy here. Well, you know what I mean. Okay, so again, oh, I'm going too fast. All right. I just also want to say that, again, Amalek means doubt, and doubt is very serious. We are to test the spirits, not doubt or question, not to waver, but to test. Okay? Now, I know I read this before, but I think it's important that I do it again here. I read it out. Okay, this is a Jewish paper by John J. Parsons. And I agree with what he says here. In Jewish tradition, Amalek represents pure evil, or those who have given themselves over to the dark side of impurity. Indeed, the name Amalek begins with the letter Aeon, symbolizing the eye, and equals 240 in gematria, the same value, meaning doubt. Haughty, okay, doubt. Amalek therefore represents the evil eye of doubt, or even the severed eye. Example, when you remove Aeon from Amalek, you are left with Malek, a verb that means to chop off or to sever. Understood in this way, Amalek represents the spiritual blindness acting arrogantly in the world, and therefore the Lord vowed perpetual warfare against Amalek. Amalek embodies the principle of the lack of the fear of God, and therefore represents the power of darkness and evil in the world. Okay, Aeon, the eye. I remember when I doubted my faith, how I fell, and I was falling hard. And the question was, what did I do wrong? And it was so subtle. It was so subtle. And all of a sudden I felt like I was just falling, and I started to doubt. And if I had done something wrong, I started, it just opened up a very negative hole. Like I was just falling down this hole. And I remember a voice, and it was very sharp, and it was very woof, like, and I was as though being scolded. And I remember the voice saying, "Why do you play with your salvation?" I had no idea what this meant at the time. I never opened up the book. I didn't know the scriptures, never went to church. I didn't know what this meant really in depth at all. And this was very scary. And so I started to look into salvation. I started to read, and that's all I would do, is just read and pray and cry, and this is all I could do. And I remember Jesus coming to me, and in my ear he said, "Do you remember when I told you you had a Father in heaven?" And I remember nodding my head, but I was still crying. I want to tell you that in the presence of Jesus, who spoke in my ear, there was no emotion. It was his voice. The day of my visitation with I Am, there was no emotion. It was his voice. It was powerful. It was mighty. And outside of me, not within. So that tingling that people say that I got a tingle, that is not what I felt. And he spoke in my ear. Remember, do you remember when I told you you had a Father in heaven? It was his voice. Outside of myself and in my ear.
Additionally, quail can be seen all over the area. It is theorized that they fly in huge numbers over the Red Sea from Egypt, only to fall to the ground exhausted on the Arabian side. Exodus 16:13 records that in the evening, quail covered the camp of the Israelites. Jim and Penny also find grinding stones, spear points, and other sorts of weapons, all fashioned in the Egyptian style, which the Israelites would have learned during their 400 years of slavery in Egypt. But the most compelling of their discoveries is also the most mysterious.
I think the greatest find around this mountain was the split rock discovery. We had nothing to do with the split rock discovery. It was brought to our attention by the Caldwell family. This, to me, is the real nail in this whole thing that drives it home that this is the real Mount Sinai.
And we came up to a break in the rocks, and I looked over from the north looking due south, and both of us were just stunned. There 2 miles away was a monolith that just stood out in the landscape.
In that valley, there are numerous natural outcroppings of hills that are just comprised of boulders. And then there is this one with this massive rock sitting atop of it.
From a distance, it's big. When you're close to it, it is enormous. It's 4 stories tall. And I've often said that the miracle that would have happened there probably rivaled or surpassed the crossing of the Red Sea.
The Exodus account says that the people of Israel grumbled against Moses, saying, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?"
Your tongue feels like a piece of tar from a Texas highway when you're out in the desert. The sun is relentless. They would have cried out for water. And of course, Moses heard their cries, petitioned God. Moses struck the rock, and it split right down the middle from top to bottom. The Bible literally says the water gushed from this.
I climbed up the backside to the very base of this rock, And right at the base of that split, it's deeply gouged. And the rock on either side, if you look straight up from the inside of that rock, it's really, really smooth, but it's pressure flaked. Big chunks of granite have been flaked from the bottom. And it's not a normal erosive pattern for granite. Granite generally from just wind and erosion will crack and flake off from the top down. This is coming up as though something came flying up and really gouged the rock. When that rock was split into, a geyser erupted out of the top of it. It blew those two pieces of that rock apart.
It's very interesting. This part of the world gets a half an inch of rain every 10 years. It's so arid and so dry. Yet this rock shows distinct evidence of water erosion. Not just a trickle, a burst of water flowing from it, washing out the whole mountainside, going down and washing all the sand that's down below it, creating an ancient lake bed down below.
Now you're talking about anywhere from 600,000 to estimates of up to 2 million people that came out of Egypt. If we were talking about a tiny little rock with a tiny little trickle, they would still be in line waiting to get a sip of that water. This place would have filled with water so quickly that that entire group of people could have come around the edges of this 2 or 3 mile long area and immediately taken their fill of water.
It's very compelling. If you were to show the picture to somebody and say, oh, it came from Colorado or Utah, well, you'd accept that. But if you say this came from one of the most arid places in the world where there are no rivers.
The most graphic description would be found in Psalms. Thou didst cleave the rock in the wilderness, and the waters ran down as rivers. And that Hebrew word for clave means to split cleanly in two. There is no such candidate for any other site that has been investigated or is currently being investigated as Mount Sinai.
Beginning in 1923, early 20th century, German nationalist and Nazi party propaganda would identify the Holy Roman Empire as the first rank meaning empire, with the German Empire as the second rank, and what eventually became the Nazi Germany as the third. Hitler. When the Nuremberg trial ended in October 1946, 10 senior Nazi officials were hanged. An American journalist heard one of their ranks, Julius Streicher, cried out with his last words, Purim Fest. Purim Fest. We should not forget that Amalek represents a spirit which has operated throughout history. Both Moses and Mordecai in the scroll of Esther understood that the prayer and fasting were needed tools to combat the spirit of the anticism. We need to be a people of action and visible to show what side we are on.
It was scary finding those little skulls in there. What were those little skulls? Where did they come from?
Could you describe what they look like?
Tiny little ones. 2 little skulls. Tiny baby ones.
And they're in here.
I feel that fear we had running upstairs to the back door.
And I spent 5 years in the Canadian government calls it residential schools, but really these were prisoner of war camps. I was in the one called the Mohawk Institute. Starved us, beat us, froze us, and it was horrific. There was no controls in the place. Kids were always getting beat up or being put through various torture rituals. A lot of the kids were tortured in there. They were made to hang off hot pipes until they couldn't hold on anymore, and they just fell to the floor from the roof. And they were beaten whenever someone felt like it. Made to hold on to electric fences. Or
and the ministry found out I was pregnant, and they told me to have an abortion. And after I have the abortion, to have a tubal ligation, so I won't have any more children. They said if I didn't have a tubal ligation, then I would never see my daughter Patricia again.
Isaiah 13:18. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children.
Hello, my name is Kevin Annett. This is Sunday, August 4th, 2013, and I'm reading this statement from the International Common Law Court of Justice from the former Dominion of Canada, which is now under common law jurisdiction under the authority of the Republic of Ganata. The statement today is entitled, "The Roman Catholic Church is declared a transnational criminal organization," the Brussels Proclamation. This is a legal notice and instrument issued by the International Common Law Court of Justice. On February 25th, 2013, the Roman Catholic Church and its highest officials were lawfully convicted of engaging in crimes against humanity and an international criminal conspiracy to aid and abet child trafficking. This verdict of the International Common Law Court of Justice found that the Church and its governing body, the Vatican Incorporated, actually constitutes a criminal body under international law. On July 11th, 2013, Pope Francis I, Jorge Bergoglio, confirmed the criminal status of his church by establishing new internal church policies that criminalize the disclosure of information and actually counsel and compel criminality among his followers, clergy, and employees of the church. Now, these policies and Bergoglio's own public statements reaffirm the existing canon law policy known as crimen solicitanus that actually protects child rapists. And it does so by directing all Catholics to suppress evidence of child rape and trafficking within their church, and by threatening punishment of those who disclose such evidence. By these remarks and policies, Bergoglio has not only ordered his followers to break the law, but also to commit treason in their own countries by violating child protection laws and undermining police agencies. The Pope, in short, is not simply facilitating international child abuse and trafficking, but he is heading a criminal conspiracy against the sovereignty of other nations and the law of nations. Now, under international law, such actions amount to an act of war. Those responsible are justifiably declared to be an enemy of peace-loving humanity, and the human race has the right to protect itself against such war-making states. Let it be known to the world, therefore, that Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, and the head of the Church of Rome, is indeed such an enemy of humanity. And accordingly, on Thursday, August 1st, 2013, a bench warrant order was issued by the International Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels for the immediate arrest and trial of Jorge Bergoglio for these crimes. Now, here's a copy of the bench warrant issued by the Common Law Court, and this will be attached to the broadcast and the email that goes along with this. Let it also be recognized that as a proven criminal body engaged in human trafficking, money laundering, and child torture, the Roman Catholic Church constitutes an international criminal organization that is waging war against humanity, its children, and its laws.
Again, here it says 1923, early 20th century Germany, nationalist and Nazi party propaganda would identify the Holy Roman Empire as the first rank. Okay, so here is what we're going to be looking at here is Odin, right? All right, Odin comes from Adam. Adam is Esau, all right? Okay, so let me just read this out. The 1936 Berlin Olympic Games were more than just a worldwide sporting event. They were a show of Nazi propaganda, stirring significant conflict. Despite the exclusionary principles of the 1936 Games, countries around the world still agreed to participate. Nazi Germany used the 1936 Olympic Games for the propaganda purposes. The Nazis promoted an image of a new, strong, and united Germany while masking the regime's targeting of the Jews and the Roma Gypsies, as well as Germans' growing militarism. For the first time in history of the modern Olympic Games, people in the United States and Europe called for a boycott of the Olympic Games because of what later became known as the human rights abuses. Although the movement ultimately failed, it set an important precedent for future Olympic boycott campaigns, such as those in 2008 and 2014, which I'll be going to a little later. Once the boycott movement narrowly failed, Germany had its propaganda coup. The 49 nations who sent teams to the Games legitimized the Hitler regime, both in the eyes of the world and of the German domestic audiences. I'm really going to be skimming through all of this. Okay. In 1936, Summer Olympics Games were held in Berlin for 2 weeks. Adolf Hitler camouflaged his anti-Semitic and expansionist agenda while hosting the Games, hoping to impress the many foreign visitors who were in Germany for the Games. Hitler authorized a brief relaxation in anti-Jewish activities, including the removal of signs barring Jews from public places. And here we are looking at this today with the unvaccinated. The Games were a resounding propaganda success for the Nazis. They presented foreign spectators with the image of peaceful and a tolerant Germany. In the 1936 Games also saw the introduction of the Olympic torch relay, in which a lit torch is carried from the Olympia to the site hosting the Olympic Games. This footage shows the inauguration of this new ritual. Okay. The Holocaust was a systematic state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million European Jews by Nazi German regime and its allies and collaborators. The Holocaust was an evolving process that took place throughout Europe between 1933 and 1945. Anti-Semitism was the foundation of the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism, the hatred or the prejudice against Jews, was a basic tenet of Nazi ideology. Tenet, where have we heard this before? Right? So, let me just proceed. The prejudice was also widespread throughout Europe. Okay, so here, again, the prejudice against Jews was a basic tenet of Nazi ideology. Okay. Tenet means doctrine, belief. Where is it? Anyway, that's what it means, tenet, right? Okay, so you remember this. This is the Travis Park, right? Or is it not Travis Park, but Travis Scott, sorry. This is the concert, and I was doing something on biblical here, and I'm talking about it. And it says, and so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I exceedingly fear and quake. Okay, and then do you remember this? Tenet, the plan. Okay, this was Travis Scott. Okay, I'm just going to replay this for you. Okay, so here we have tenet, and the meaning is a principle or belief, especially one of the main principles of a religion or philosophy. Doctrine, okay? Here, the dictionary definition of the word tenet is a principle, belief, or doctrine generally held to be true. Tenet is the name of an organization that is that the protagonist create to keep the world's timeline flowing in the right direction. And boy, does that make sense concerning Jonathan Clegg. Okay, so here's Travis Scott's soundtrack here. Okay, it's called The Plan, and it's in reverse. And I remember looking down in the comment section where it said, go to 1010, and it says Germany. So I thought that was really interesting. So I'm going to play this out, and you can hear Germany. Okay, you'd have to, for me, it's very clear, and I'm hoping that it'll be just as clear for you. Okay, but if you go to the original soundtrack, you don't hear Germany anymore. So I found that very interesting, so I'm bringing it to your attention. Okay, so here we have, again, saying Germany at the 110 mark. I say the 1010, but the 110 mark. Okay, so here we go. Okay, 1010. Okay, now I want you to look at something else here just before we leave this part of it. Okay, so you see the imagery here. Okay, so let me bring you here. Okay, I just wanted to show you something here. This is something that I remembered that Jonathan Clegg was showing with his marketing video, his Vlad marketing video, sunglasses. And the first thing that came to me when I saw the cover of the album, The Tenant, I remembered this here, this image right here where he had the arched back, right here. Okay. Okay, so anti-Semitism was at the foundation of the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism, the hated of or prejudiced against Jews, was a basic tenet of Nazi ideology. Doctrine. This prejudice was also widespread throughout Europe. During World War II, Nazi Germany and its allies and collaborators killed nearly 2 out of every 3 European Jews using deadly living conditions, brutal mistreatment, mass shootings, and gassing, and special design killing centers. When they came to power in Germany, the Nazis did not immediately start to carry out mass murder. However, they quickly began using the government to target and exclude Jews from German society. Among other anti-Semitic measures, the Nazi Germany regime enacted discriminatory laws and organized violence targeting Germany's Jews. The Nazi persecution of Jews became increasingly radical between 1933 and 45. This radication accumulated in a plan that Nazi leaders referred to as the final solution to the Jewish question. The final solution was the organized and systematic mass murder of European Jews. The Nazi German regime implemented this genocide between 1941 and 1945. And you can see here off to the left, the members of the stormtroopers with boycott signs blocked the entrance to a Jewish-owned shop. One of the signs exhorted Germans, defend yourself. Germans, defend yourself. Don't buy from Jews. Berlin, Germany, April 1st, 1933. Okay, so here we have a chart. Okay, the Nuremberg race laws. Chart with the title, okay, Nuremberg race laws. In the fall of 1935, German Jews lost their citizenship according to the definition posed in these new regulations. Only full Germans were entitled to the full protection of the law. This was the chart to aid Germans in understanding the laws. White circles represented Aryan Germans, black circles represented Jews, partial shaded circles represented mixed race individuals. The chart has columns explaining the German bloodlines. Okay. Okay, I'm running out of time. All right, so here again, Nazi propaganda about the ghettos. A recurrent theme in Nazi anti-Semitic propaganda was that Jews spread diseases. To prevent non-Jews from attempting to enter the ghettos and from seeing the conditions of daily life there for themselves, German authorities posted quarantine signs at the entrance, warning of the danger of contagious disease. Since inadequate sanitation and water supplies coupled with starvation rations quickly undermined the health of the Jews in the ghettos. To prevent the non-Jews from attempting to enter the ghettos and from seeing the conditions of daily life there for themselves, German authorities posted quarantine signs at the entrances, warning of the danger of contagious disease. These warnings became a self-fulfilling prophecy as typhus and other infectious diseases ravaged ghetto populations. Subsequent Nazi propaganda utilized these man-made epidemics to justify isolating the filthy Jews from the large population. Again, right out of the book of Jonathan Kleck. An anti-Semitic poster published in German-occupied Poland in March of 1941. The caption reads, "Jews are lice. They cause typhus." This German-published propaganda poster was intended to instill fear of the Jews among Christian Poles. Okay, this gentleman here, his name is William Combs, and he was the last living witness of the day when the 10 children went missing with the Queen and the Prince Philip. And he ended up, he died the day before he was to testify in the courts. His death was suspicious. So this is in memory of William, and his voice is being heard, and his suffering is not in vain. And ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for the testimony against them and the Gentiles.
Visited for about 3 days, 2-3 days. I don't know how long it was. I think it was about 3 days actually, and a lot of children went missing there. Many children that weren't cooperative, and like myself, wasn't cooperative, and they were put into with the children who were sick was at the end of the dormitory, they kept the sickies there, the ones who were sick with tuberculosis, and they put me and my brother Ernie in with the ones who were sick because we wouldn't comply.
In the same room with people who had TB, they didn't separate us.
Then we were forced to play with them. The nuns made us play with those kids. We didn't want to get sick either, but they were forcing us to play with those kids. And also, they made some of them sleep with the other kids.
And he saith, Hearken ye all Judah, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem, and thou King Jehoshaphat. Thou saith the Lord unto you, Be not afraid nor dismayed by reason of the great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's. Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, wherever soever thou goest. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Romans 12:19. Until next time, no fear, be love, and give hope. Again, Jonathan Nolan is now over at BHU, Jacoyas 99. He has been permanently taken down from YouTube. And I'll be talking about that a little later also. All right, so no fear, be love, and give hope. Thank you, Jesus.